I'm Seema Rao, Deputy Director and Chief Experience Officer at the Akron Art Museum. And I am joined by...
I'm Bill Shearrow, and I'm a potter, ceramic tile artist.
That's wonderful. So, Bill, last week I got to go to the Canton Brewing Company, and it's opening soon, October 1st. And one thing that struck me is that brewers and ceramicists have one particular thing in common. You need a lot of stuff. Like, they have a lot of very specialized tools, and he was showing me how the grinder takes the, it has to grind the grains, and then they have to go up a thing and get into a kiln and then do this and heat it. And it's also stuff that has a lot of specialized things. I mean, heating beer, for example, has to be certain temperature.
Oh, yeah.
So what are some of the specialized tools that you absolutely need to do your job?
Well, for me, I need my potter's wheel. I need a kiln.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely need my slab roller and my extruder. And then I need my hands. They are the most important tool I have.
Well, so I do wonder, the other thing though, it struck me, he was telling me about so they do sours. Mm-hmm. And so I was thinking about, and then we're drinking here this sort of stout, that there's a lot of, so there's a lot of science clearly in brewing. And I know from my poor attempts at ceramics, there's a lot of heat and science that's in ceramics, but then there's a lot of surprises and magic. Mm-hmm. You do Raku. Can you describe Raku for us? I feel like Raku is totally magic for me.
Oh, it is. It's a great process. Basically, you take your once fired pots and you put a glaze on them, which is designed to melt at a really low temperature at about 1850 degrees. And you quickly take them up to temperature over about a half hour, 45 minutes. And once the kiln is preheated, it only takes about 20-25 minutes. And when it reaches temperature, you turn it off, open up the kiln, reach in with a long set of tongs, and remove the red hot piece, and I put it in a steel can full of straw or other combustibles. That will catch it on fire immediately. You cover it up, and then that smoke and the carbon will react with the metals in the glaze to just give it the most wonderful effects. It's the smoke and the carbon, and it's called a post-fire reduction.
Wow. So do you know, so one thing that you're saying that I'm listening to you, and all I hear still is like magic. When you open it, do you know what you're going to get? Or
No.
Is it always magic?
It's always a surprise. I have an idea what I'd like to get in my head, okay. But that means nothing. I might know I'm going to get some beautiful greens and maybe some coppers and stuff out of certain glazes. And I don't know what I'm going to end up with until after it's cooled, 20 minutes, half hour later, when I can actually look at it. And then it's the big surprise. And that's just for the one technique.
That's so, that is so fascinating to me, because I think for a lot of us, when we look at art, we think, and there are a lot of art forms in which you have a lot of control over every step. Yes. But that you give up that control by choice is really fascinating to me.
Well, that's with my pottery. I give up that all three of the techniques I do. I just know it's going to be whatever happens, happens. The naked Raku, you end up with these black and crackles as you remove a layer of slip. And then the horsehair Raku, you get the lines from the horsehair burning onto the piece as you put it on. And it kind of dances around and adheres to the pottery.
So I think I know what horsehair Raku is, but what's the horsehair part? Explain that to me.
Well, the piece goes into the kiln with nothing on it at all. And then at 1850, I take it out of the kiln, put it
1850 degrees Fahrenheit. Pizza ovens at their hottest are 500.
Yeah, and so it goes about 1850 degrees, and it goes into an insulated can. And after about a minute, I take strands of horsehair, place them on it. As the hair hits the piece, it kind of dances all around, crackles up, and disappears in a wisp of really bad smelling smoke. But what's left is these great swiggly lines. And then after they're cooled, I hand polish and wax them. So they just have this really,
So
really
so you burnish them.
They're burnished when I throw them or trim them. But
Oh, okay.
afterwards, I actually hand polish them.
Oh, wow.
And
Wow. So,
so,
so because I was looking at your works, and I'm sorry to say I haven't seen any in real life. And I've been thinking a lot about ceramics because I've been looking up your work and think about the processes. There's something very sad to me about us having to be virtual because ceramics are so physical.
they're so tactile. You want
Yeah.
to touch them. You have to touch them. It's the
Yeah.
beauty.
Yeah. Yeah. And your ceramics have a real layering. We were drinking beer together virtually. And one of the things for me about this beer, actually, I mean, we matched you up because you're in Canton, Canton Brewing Company. But this beer is a stout that is very layered. And actually, it's happenstance that I guess in some ways that we got a ceramicist and we have your work because your work has that sort of layering too. That
Uh-huh.
there's so much to see in it, but I wished I could see it for real.
Well, it's funny because I've actually started home brewing in 1989.
Mm.
And I've been home brewing for 20 some odd years, or almost 30 years. What am I thinking? And
Wow.
so I know how to brew beer. It's all
Wow.
small batches, but I leave that to everyone else right now because I have to spend my time on my art. But once or twice a year, I do like to make a beer or a mead.
Interesting. Interesting. We were talking earlier about how Ohio is a really big ceramics
Hmm.
community. And it's also a big beer community because both ceramics and beer in Ohio, a lot of them come from Eastern Europe and Germany, which is also a place where they're making a lot of ceramics, really
Hmm.
beautiful ceramics, right? So I wonder if there's some sort of, I mean, I would think of like ceramics were used
Oh, make
for,
beer
right,
steins and
growlers.
mugs and
Uh-huh.
functional dishes and plates and everything else. I mean, before Corel, everyone had to rely on a potter.
Yeah, somebody was telling me once that one of the things that they think is really challenging for ceramics is that people have them, and so they don't understand the value of them because you can buy like stamped, slip glaze stuff, and you don't understand what something, I brought this up just so I had it, but something that's handmade would be like.
Mhm.
And I mean, how long would it take you to make, let's say a vase? How long does that take?
Well, it's kind of a hard question because when I'm making, I will sit there for a day and just throw piece after piece after piece after piece. And then the next day I'll get up and spend the whole day trimming the pieces. Then they have to dry, then they're fired. Then I'll spend a day glazing them, and then another day firing the pieces, firing doing the raku process.
Right.
And then another day after that, finishing and polishing the pieces. So I
Mm-hmm.
never really break it down into how long it takes me to do each individual piece. Um, but
Plus
there's,
a lifetime of making pieces. How long have you been making them?
oh, I've been making pieces since 1979.
A lifetime. You've been making it. There's like a lifetime's worth of.
Yeah, since I was, you know, in college.
Is this what you studied?
Yeah, I went to Columbus College of Art and Design.
So what brought you to ceramics? Why was it ceramics and not another art form?
Well, I started out in advertising, then I switched to illustration, and I switched from illustration and fine arts. Then I went to fine art and illustration.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I just got more positive reinforcement from the ceramic end. And then my painting teachers, why aren't you a painter? Why aren't you a painter? And they came to my senior show and they saw my potter and they go, okay, you can do that too.
You're very actually. It's interesting that you say that because I can see both illustration. Some of your work has a very almost like it's sharing something. I feel like some of the tiles particularly feel like there's like because illustration is a form of visual communication, or at least that's how I think of it. And then
Yeah.
some of your applications of glaze are very painterly.
Well, they're definitely for the tiles.
Mm-hmm.
The tiles to me are a graphic design and they have to
Yeah.
work together as a whole unit. So when people are designing a kitchen, a bathroom, a backsplash, whatever, you have all the tiles you need to complete the entire image.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's what it's all about. So I try to take total control over my tiles. Where the pottery, it's time to let it go and let Mother Nature take place and a little bit of serendipity.
Hmm. You kind of have a yin, you have like, it's interesting, when I look at your works, you have such different things. The tiles, I kept picturing the tiles as the frontage of a mantelpiece, you know, like in a
Oh yeah,
fire.
they're
I imagine
beautiful on
like, I kept
mantle.
looking at them and thinking, oh, look at that cozy, especially because fall's starting. And I'm thinking of this cozy fire with the little stories and somebody sitting there and looking at them. But then your ceramics are sort of otherworldly. So do you think of both concurrently, or how's your thought process when you're trying to think of your new works?
Well, my pottery is more my art form,
Mm.
and then my tile is it's just a beautiful, it's a product line almost.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to design for people's homes. I'm trying to do something that's going to be, have just go on, have its own life after I'm gone, something that's going to go on forever. And my pottery too, but I'm trying to make something that can be accessible to anybody and understood by anybody.
It's a great Ohio tradition of it. I mean, like Rookwood, that
Mhm.
kind of stuff. You know, I love the idea. I mean, that you're doing both because you're also making a living, right? Like the
Right.
surround. I mean, somebody
This
could
is my
buy
job.
those tiles.
This is my job.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so I'm going for timeless because I worked for a number of years for an arts and tile
Mm.
company here locally.
Uh-huh.
And when they went under, um, I was given the opportunity to buy back all my intellectual property that I gave them over the years. And so it was hard to make it just on the pottery, so I needed some other line to balance things out. And the tiles seem to be a really nice balance. And they're kind of timeless is what I'm going for on those
Mm-hmm.
tiles.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of on the pottery too. I'm going for a timeless elegance.
Mm-hmm. And you know, I think about things that I own, and I own, you know, like IKEA mugs, I guess, big box store mugs, I should say, and I own lots of stuff that I just use, and those are fine. But then I have some beautiful things that I really want to have, and in our society right now, particularly with COVID, I feel like people are moving towards these really beautiful things that they have fewer of. Because like your tiles are really beautiful. They're much different than a tile you'd get at a big box store,
Oh, way.
right? I mean, like they really are. And so you would choose to make that investment.
It,
And in the 19th century, people were doing that all the time, right? They were
right.
buying beautiful things.
Because nothing was factory produced.
Yeah,
Everything you wanted, you made yourself or you hired somebody else to make.
yeah.
And the whole arts and craft movement was kind of a rebellion against the Industrial Revolution.
Right.
And so when I had the chance, I started my own tile line. And then when I had the chance to buy everything back that I designed for that company for 15 years, I kind of went on it because like, this is still my heart and soul went into that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Are they pressed? Are they
They're
mold
hand
made?
pressed. So how I make them now, I make a plaster mold. I roll out a slab, cut it to the correct size, put it in the mold, and then hand press every single piece. Rub them down, and after about 15 minutes, I'll turn it over, it'll pop out of the mold, and then I can make another one.
Wow. 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 So
And
like,
then,
you know, like daily output, beers, for example, is like, you're hand doing each one. And you
right.
make your molds, I'm sure.
Yes, I do. I do
Yeah.
everything from scratch. Now I have a piece of equipment that I'm trying to, once I get my bigger studio going on, I'll be able to move it in there. It's a friction press, so I can make a larger mold, put the slab of clay underneath it, spin it around, it comes down, slams on the pottery, then I lift it up and I have a tile. So I can,
Oh,
instead of taking 15 minutes to make a tile, I can do it in just a minute or so.
wow.
So that
Wow.
really,
That would be huge. 15 times as many.
oh yeah.
Wow.
But it still takes a long time. Some of those tiles take an hour a piece to paint.
Yeah. I mean, that's the labor. To me, I was looking at them and I was like, wow. I mean, it's minute details you're putting in there.
It is the details, but that's what makes mine stand out from everybody else's.
Right.
Most tiles are flat with a raised line with color in them. Mine are three-dimensional, and they're painted three-dimensionally. most three-dimensional tiles just have one glaze on them. I'll hand paint every one of them because I like the effect.
Mm. It's interesting because it's also old and new, right? Like people are putting them into new homes, maybe new construction, whatever. But then it's also a process. That's how tiles were once made. I mean,
Right.
if you look at like, I don't know. I mean, you can look at tiles in Italy in
Mm-hmm.
the Renaissance. That's how they were made. They were
Yes,
each hand painted. So Della
absolutely.
Robbia or whatever. So I mean, I think for a lot of people, ceramics is functional craft, things like that. But your ceramic arts, one of the things I'm really struck by for you is the fact that it is not easy. So those things are hard, but they seem there's a machine to them. But when you're
Mhm.
forming something, what does it feel like when you're making like the vessels behind you, for example?
I love to throw. The
Mm,
process is just wonderful.
mm,
And there's a mechanics that you have to learn when you're a beginner. And once you learn the mechanics, then your creative side can take over. And your technical abilities, you develop them with years and time, but your brain just takes over and you can make whatever form you really want to. And I'm going for that tall, elegant form with
mm,
that long neck. Or some customers where said, well, you need a round piece. So I had to think really hard a form that I could make that was round, that still didn't seem heavy on the bottom. I wanted to float and elevate. And then that little neck that comes up and just comes at that fine little tiny little spout at the top,
huh.
that little neck.
So I'm trying to like sort of think out because I'm not a ceramicist in any way, shape, or form, and certainly not wheels. It almost seems to me like when you learn to drive, at first you're paying attention to learning to drive. Then once you know how to drive, then you can focus on a lot of other things. Is that what's happening? Like you know how to throw a wheel, so you're able to focus on the form that you're
Oh yeah,
creating rather than it falling or it being lopsided.
right, absolutely. For me, it's concentrate on the form. I want to make sure that the form is correct, that everything is how I want it to be. And once the form is right, I don't have to worry about it. Then I just have to make sure that I don't drop it or break it in the process because I am probably the world's largest klutz.
So have you had a lot of drops, things like that, klutzy things? Were you like,
Oh yeah, I break stuff all the time. My wife just always gives me flack, like, how can you make such beautiful things and be so klutzy? And I go,
because we all have different strengths, right?
it keeps the world in balance.
So, what are some of your biggest successes in your work?
Um, that's hard to say. It just
Like, what makes you happy in the work
enjoying
you're
that
doing?
I really love what I'm doing.
Uh-huh.
That's the successful part. And then when people love my work too,
Mhm.
it's, the sale is always nice. And when someone comes out and purchases something, that's a great feeling. But it's the joy that people get when they see it just makes me feel wonderful. And when I get a piece that comes out of the kiln, it's totally unexpected how it came out. And it just makes my socks roll up and down, and I have to run around with it and show my wife, look how beautiful this it is. I have to keep it for at least a couple days.
So what's that like? Because most you want to sell your work, so they go to somebody else's house. So what's it like to have your work go into another person's, walk into a house and see your work there?
That's just a great feeling. When they're buying my work and I know that they're getting it for themselves, that is just the greatest feeling of all because they're picking it out because they love it. And it they're going to enjoy looking at it for a lifetime. It's not like, a print from Kirkland's or someplace that you put up on the wall for a year or two, and then you take it down next time you redecorate. A piece of art, you're buying that it's a lifetime commitment.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you tire of it or whatever, then you pass that on to somebody else and make them just as happy.
Mm-hmm. It is, I mean, we keep saying it, but it's tactile, it's personal, it's a connection. It's something that is so different than something that's sort of run of the mill, like my big box coffee cup. That it's really something that you want to have and keep and touch. You have behind you, I think it must be an Ikebana. on one
Yes.
side. You make, so Ikebana is the art of Japanese floral arrangements. And I,
Yes.
many years ago, was a homestay student in Japan, and I remember taking Ikebana classes. And one thing that I also am struck by is, so Ikebana and a lot of Japanese ceramics are really focused on the authentic and the sort of wabi-sabi, the fact that nothing is perfect.
Right.
And the lack of perfection is really important to them. So what are some of the philosophical things that go into when you choose how to make a piece, or when you're thinking about working on a new work? Like that one, you sort of said it. You said, well, I don't want it to be too heavy at the bottom. What are some of the other things you're thinking about?
The curve of the line.
Mm.
What is the relationship to the neck, to the shoulder, to the body, to the foot? How well do they work together? If one piece is out of whack, it's not going to work. And the form has to be relatively simple. On all of these, the surface is so busy. There's so much going on the surface. I can't have a competition between the surface and the form. They have to work together as one. And so a really simple form will do that best. But sometimes not necessarily too simple, but it's just going to be a simple form, that elegant line. It's not a bump coming through on the shoulder or something extraneous, or this just doesn't work with it.
That's really interesting. The way that you said that they shouldn't compete, that they have to have harmony between the surface and the form. I don't know that when people look at ceramics that they realize that there's so much thought has gone into the relationship between the surface and the form. I think that they don't see everything that's happening, and that's probably part of the strength of a ceramicist, right? That they just experience it all together.
Right. And I think a lot of that has to do with each individual potter. For me, that's my philosophy. But other potters, they want that contrast. They want that tension. They want that. And it's like, no, that would just drive me nuts.
So you're an educator. Have seeing people like that change how you work in your own practice?
Well, when I'm working with my students, I look at what their strengths are, and I try to teach them the techniques they need to achieve them. And then I try to get them to think about things, about how well things work together. And it's different for everybody, but I want them to do their own experience, you know. I show them what they need to know, then help guide them along to achieve their dreams. Their dreams might not be mine, but I can see what they're trying to achieve. So I will work with them to try so they achieve what they want. But then I might also try to influence sometimes if something is not working. It's like, this doesn't work, and here's why.
You're teaching them to drive, but you're going to let them go where they want to go.
That's right. Say, I'm going to teach you to drive, and you can go to Florida, but I don't care if you get there by way of Texas or by way of the coast.
Yes, you could go either way. What's your favorite part of the process?
The throwing.
Oh, yeah. How come?
I just love the feel of the clay, and I can just let it take over. When I'm glazing, I have to concentrate on what I'm doing, you know, making sure that I'm getting the glaze on not too thick, not too thin. And it's the form. I just love making that form. So the throwing I love, and then the trimming is really great too, because the trimming completes the form. I have the form there. I always tell my students, you throw for the inside, and the outside will take care of itself.
So when you say trim, I understand what you mean by trim, but what are you trimming?
Well, generally, I have to trim the bottom of the piece. The bottom third needs trimmed. But if there's a little tiny bump or a slight bulge on the shoulder or the neck or a lip, which is not quite right, I can shave that off to get that line that I want.
How much trimming do you usually do?
A lot of pieces get trimmed top to bottom, and it's not generally a lot. It just might be subtle, but then it's also burnishing them. So I trim it, but then I want to make sure that it's perfectly smooth, because for a lot of pieces or a lot of people, that doesn't make a difference. The glaze hides all those little trim marks. Well, with these hand-polished surfaces, any little scuff or line on the surface is going to show up. And so I have to make sure all those disappear before it's ever Raku fired. Because if it's there when it's Raku'd, it'll be there when I go to polish it out and wax it. So I want that surface to be smooth like a piece of polished marble or granite.
It's interesting how much work you're talking about. I mean, this is just fascinating to me to think about something you're holding, somebody else is going to hold, actually spend so much of your hand is on it, right?
All this absolutely. My hand has touched every centimeter of that piece. Because I got to polish those out, and I want to make sure that they are absolutely correct.
It's such an interesting, just hearing you talk about this, it's such a balance between control and freedom, because you have to control all the parts that you're talking about, and the burnishing and the cutting and the trimming, and then you Raku fire it, and then you add some horsehair, and then you get something that's kind of magical.
Oh yeah, it's like that's where that's the part I really enjoy. Is I really love that. Okay, I've done my part. Now let the fire and the flames do theirs, and I'll see what magic they give me. And if I like it, I'm happy with it. If it comes out horrible, I'm going to fire it again.
Oh, so you can?
Oh,
so
yeah,
I will try
all I can. I will fire it over and over till I get something that I like or it breaks, whichever comes first.
How many times can you fire it?
It depends. Sometimes only once or twice. Other times it might be 4 or 5 times I might fire it, and then it'll finally break, and I'll get what I want, but I glue it back together. And I take 22 karat gold, and then I'll fill in all the breaks with that 22 karat gold. It's kintsugi.
Yeah,
and it's a Japanese art form where everything has been, it's like just like the human spirit. We all can be damaged and broken, but that doesn't make us less beautiful.
That's a great metaphor. It's true. It's very true. It's actually, there's a lot of metaphors in this, right? Like part of it is being okay with uncertainty on some level, but then also it's that thing that they say at work, manage for success, right? I mean, your refiring is like managing for success. I'm going to keep doing this. I'm going to keep doing this. And then I'm going to fix whatever happened out of it.
Right.
There's actually a lot of metaphors in this.
I just, that part is thrilling to me. And my tiles are, everything is exactly how I want them. Mm-hmm. Well, the pottery, I just let what happens is going to happen. And that's Mother Nature coming in. You know, no matter what you do, there's going to be something else that you don't have control over. And to me, that's the beauty of my pieces.
Yes, you have a nice balance in your life between like the three things, the tiles, the ceramics, so the certainty, the uncertainty, and then teaching, which is kind of, can be both probably. You know, so another thing, as you're talking, one thing I didn't think to ask, but now I'm looking at the ones behind you. How thin are they? Since I'm not able to hold them.
Well, the lip, they're probably about 1/8 of an inch or less. Mm-hmm. And the thickest part on the piece might be 3/16 of an inch.
So that's why, you know, when you're saying about the breaking, I was thinking there's an interesting thing about an artist who decides to work in something that's fragile. It's a fragile media on some level. So why work in a media that that could break?
I don't know. Maybe it's my dangerous side.
The dangerous ceramicist from Canton.
Yeah, it's like, you know, it's like everything's not permanent. This is as permanent as you allow it to be. If you don't break it, it's going to last. But even if it does break, it can be put back together.
I love that. It just feels very human. This is like very, very human. Just ceramics, I haven't thought about it framed in these ways, and it feels so, like, also at the moment, I think a lot of people are feeling a lot of things like breaking, having to do things over and over, but also this idea that things are tactile, that we've lost the sense of touch, right? You can't touch people you don't know. I was saying that in Starr County, there's a lot of, I live in Cuyahoga County where everyone has to wear masks. And I was at Canton Brewing Company and nobody was wearing masks.
I'm surprised. They're supposed to be.
Oh, okay. Well, they were not, it was outside. We were in that plaza where, and not inside the brewing company. I was just walking down the street from parking. And I was thinking, for me, life has changed so much that it's notable to me. Like in a life, our lives have changed so much in this world. And I do think that this sort of the idea of all this change has made things like ceramics or things that you could have as gifts, for example, in the holidays, even more important. Authentic things now have such validity that maybe in the past it wasn't that important, but now to get something handmade by an artist you know for a holiday, it seems much more important. And I think a lot of people are shopping local. Are you
I
seeing a
really
lot of
hope
people?
so. Yeah.
Are you
Getting
seeing a
lot
lot of
more
people buying
interest.
holiday gifts? Sorry.
Yeah, oh, I am. I'm actually through my Facebook and Instagram. I'm starting to get people like, I want to get Christmas presents from you. I want Christmas presents from you. And I know they're going to be coming as far away as Hawaii
That's
to get their
wonderful.
pieces, in California. Like, oh, I'm going to be visiting Ohio in October. Can I come to your studio? Absolutely.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think that that's awesome because artists have jobs. Like this is your job. You are doing this for a living. You are making things and selling them, and that's part of our economy. The arts are a huge part of this economy. Arts and culture is something like 4.5% of the GDP or whatever.
Oh.
But it's actually, that number is also film studios and all these things. But artists in our region, a lot of them are really jobbers. They're doing this for a living.
Yes, you have to. You got to pay your bills.
Yeah, you do have to pay your bills. You do have to pay your bills. So that's one thing I think a lot of times when I talk to patrons that they're surprised by, that this is a job for people. What's something else that might surprise people who are looking at your ceramics?
That they're made by hand. People look at them and they're always questioning, are these made in a mold? Who does these for you? Are they made on a lathe? What material is it? All those things that always come into their heads. You make all of this by yourself? Yes, I do.
I am always stunned at the volume of stuff that a ceramicist makes. Like in their lifetime, they're probably one of the highest volume art makers, right? Ceramicists, you're just because it's something where people might buy a set of, you might buy 2 Ikebana containers, you might buy 10 tiles, so you need to make things in volume.
Oh yeah. So for tiles, I only make them in volume when people are ordering specifically for their kitchen. I don't keep any of that in stock. I just can't do that. No. I make them when they need them. The pottery, my vases and Ikebanas, they're decorative elements. And I make a lot, but I don't make like a production potter.
Right.
Who will sit there and they'll make 50 bowls in a day or 100 bowls in a day. I make bowls once a year. Besides my demos at the museum, I make little tiny bowls that are like sized for food prep.
Oh, nice.
And I make those and we give them away every year at Christmas. Or we'll make mugs that we give away at Christmas or little bowls. And then someone will occasionally, I love your bowls. I want to commission you to make some a set for me or something.
But it's also because one of the things for me also about ceramics, you were saying production ceramics. Production ceramics is like for a lot of people everyday wear. Ohio, like our region, Fiesta wears production ceramics.
Right.
I mean, that's factory production ceramics. And even there are ceramicists in our region who do production ceramics, and what they're putting their time into is making a volume and then probably glazing it in a very easy way. You're putting your time into complexity for one thing. So they might make 50 and you're making 1, but it probably takes about the same amount of time.
Right.
I would guess, right?
Yeah, for real. For me, it's all about making one-of-a-kind pieces. But when I'm making my little bowls, I'm making those for everyday use. My mugs are for everyday use. I want people, and I'm making those, I want people to use them. Nothing is kind of more frustrating. Oh, I've collected your mugs for 20 years at Christmas. They all sit on the shelf. No one's allowed to use them. And I'm going, oh my God. It's like, no, you use it. Guess what? If you break it, you know where to get another one. And my whole thing is, how can you just enjoy that mug, which is supposed to be in your hand, staring at it on a shelf?
That's awesome. I've been thinking a lot about, because, I was thinking about talking to you, that ceramics is an interesting thing in that it's a functional art form.
Right.
And so other kinds of art forms, the only function might be decorative or illustrative. This is multifunctions. It should look nice, but then it also needs to be something that you can use. And for a
Right.
lot of people, it feels a little scary. Like I was saying that for the Canton Brewing Company cup, we hid it before this interview because I didn't want my kids to see it, because I have our wedding china. We actually use our wedding crystal because I decided, what's the point in like never using it? So my kids can use it, you know?
Yeah.
And the idea that something is so special you shouldn't use it is the opposite of ceramics, right? You're supposed to use it. You made a flower arrangement behind you. You're supposed to use that Ikebana.
My Ikebanas, I expect them to be used every day. My wife keeps flowers in those 365 days a year.
Oh, how nice.
My little bowls, my mugs, I use them daily. But my vases, I want to put that on the mantle and just enjoy just looking at that one.
Right.
But
And
the mug,
that's
I
an important function though, right? Decorative
its
is an
function
important.
is to be looked at.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so like we sit at our dining room table every day and eat dinner. We light the candles, we have a dinner, we have a glass of wine. We sit there and that's our quality time every day, is sitting there. And we'll eat off nice dishes. We drink out of the good crystal. It's like you said, we use that.
Yeah. I mean, what else right now, if anything, is about saving time, keeping time, valuing time? I think this year has really taught me that. You know, use the beautiful things. We have a friend who was a ceramicist, and we have some of his coffee cups. And, you know, getting to have something beautiful to hold and think about, it's worth it. What else is there? There's nothing else but the time we're living, the things we can enjoy, you know?
That's right. And like for us, it's about cooking. I cook every day. And I don't mean heat up a hot dog and some water. No, we cook. I love food. We like to go out, but we never went out much more than once a month anyways. It was like, what can I make? And I can just like, I'm not going to go buy something that I can make better at home. So it's all about that.
That's interesting. So you know, this is part of a series of artist conversations, and cooking has come up a couple times as something. It's sort of in relation to art making, that cooking, you could go out or you could make something wonderful at home. And somebody else brought up that too, that there's something about art making. Sure, somebody could buy a commercially produced vase or a commercially produced bowl, or they could have something beautiful. And having something beautiful is like cooking at home, like making something you make a choice to have, or going to a beautiful meal at a friend's. It's that enjoyment that makes it better.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like we enjoy gardening, we enjoy cooking, we enjoy eating good food, we enjoy art. And it's so funny because so many times I do 26 art shows a year. And
wow.
And when I
was every other week.
Show, every other week. It's like, what are we going to do? Well, you want to go to an art show? And so we would go to the art show as shopping, as opposed to selling. And it's a chance to actually talk to my artist friends that I never get to see when I'm doing the show because I'm busy working.
I don't think people have any idea how much work it takes to be an artist. You just like think of all the different kinds of work you described in this interview. You were talking about marketing yourself, putting it on social, doing all the actual making of it, the thinking about it, and then having to sell it yourself. You're doing all of this different kind of labor. It's not just the making of the art.
Maintaining a website, everything. It's all just, it's kind of sometimes mind-boggling. It's like, what was on my mind?
I know. Well, that's what I sort of think about COVID. I didn't know how easy I had it. You know, like when I could just walk into a store or, you know, just order something online. We could have had this interview online. Though I think like we could have had this interview in life. Though I do think there's sort of a boon too. So I don't know that I would have found your art if I was in the old world, right? Because I dug around the internet and I found you, and actually one of my colleagues recommended you. But there is something interesting about being in this world and all these people who've never met you find you online. Have you had any interesting stories of like surprise people finding, you know, somebody in like Ulaanbaatar or something? Have you had any
I've
surprise
had some odd things as people found me, like somebody from Jamaica. I was Googling Raku and I saw a piece of your work and I just have to have it. They'll go, okay. Or,
You sure can.
there's a lady in Spain right now. She's putting together a book and she's editing her book that she put out 3 or 4 years ago, and she wants some updated pieces. She found my work and she wants to put my piece of my work in her book.
Oh, that's wonderful.
I'm going, okay.
That's great. The internet is a boon. It's a boon. Yeah. So, what's exciting? What's the future look like? What are some exciting things on the horizon for you?
Well, we've been remodeling a second house that I want to move my studio into. And so we bought it, we gutted it, took it down to bare studs, we put all new wiring in it, all new insulation, new drywall, new furnace, and put in some more windows, and now it's getting it completed so we can move in there and expand the tile business. Because I would like to grow the tile business a lot more and expand it to the point where it stands on its own. And then when I do retire, I could sell the tile business. Because anyone could produce my tiles once they're started, and then they could hire somebody to help come up with new designs. But my pottery business, when I am no longer able to produce it, that will end.
Yes.
But my tile business can go on after I'm gone.
You know, it's such a American story, an Ohio story, these small businesses. Ohio is built on small businesses. Like I read something about the majority of cars on the road today still have at least one part made in Ohio, you know, because we make screws and nuts and all kinds of stuff. The idea that like the arts really is cottage industry in a lot of Ohio. There's lots of people who are making prints or, you know, tiles or something that you can reproduce and make a living on. But the Ohio customers have to also purchase those things, right? Like you need both. You need to make them, but you need to sell them.
Right, but I sell them all over. I do shows, and I try not to do too many shows too close to any one area. Boston Mills.
So you're going all over the country to sell shows.
Oh yeah, I'm pretty much stay for, except for one show, east of the Mississippi. But I'll do them in Michigan, Indiana, Illinois. I'll do one in St. Louis. I'll do them in Pennsylvania, New York, down in North or South Carolina, in Georgia, in Florida, Kentucky, wherever I can. I will just make sure I do those shows and try not to do too many too close to one another.
That's a lot. I mean, that's a lot of labor. That's a lot of driving.
Oh, it is. Yeah, like
ceramics are heavy. You must be driving them around.
I drive them around in a minivan. So I made sure that everything, my entire display, everything had to fit in a minivan. Because if I didn't want to, you know, I'm being, you know, green, I want to use something that's good mileage. And so the minivan will get, you know, 27, 28 miles a gallon. It's like, well, if I can get that, I can do everything. But if I start getting to bigger vehicles, I start going less than 20 miles a gallon. My expenses go up. I got to make more money to do those.
It's all business. You're so resourceful. I mean, I think it's sort of great for your art that if somebody comes to a mantle and it has your tiles and then over one of your vases, all they see is that. They don't see the business behind it.
Right.
Because that's the strength of your work. Because I think anybody would just look at the beauty of them. But for that beauty to exist, you have to run this business, clearly.
And it is a business too. It's like you have to have a good mind for business and numbers if you want to do this.
Yeah.
Unless you are really good and you have an art manager and someone else is going to handle all that for you, which would be great. But I'd still have to have my input.
Yeah, no, I think it's probably would be hard actually. I would think that it's your business is also your soul. This is another thing that is really hard about the arts because it's your vocation and your avocation. It's like your soul that's in there. So it would be, I think, hard to have somebody else do the business because it's you.
Right.
Right.
It is. I tried it. My wife is helping out some, you know, she's helping out with the website, and she helps come up with some ideas of things I should make. Because like the Ikebanas, we got one years ago from friends of mine, and she goes, "You need to make those. You need to make those. You need to make those. You need." And so, okay, how about this? Well, almost.
She knows how to get a point across. So where do other ideas come from? Where do you get other ideas? So your wife is one good source of ideas. Where do other ideas for your art come from?
It's hard to say. Nature. For my tiles, I walk through the gardens, I walk through the woods. Everything on my tiles is inspired by nature. What is local here? I don't see myself making a magnolia tile because we don't have any magnolia, you know. I'm not going for Florida plants or Texas plants. I'm going for stuff up here in the Midwest in this northeastern quadrant of the country. Things that I can see, that I can relate to, and that I might have a personal experience with, a personal attachment.
That, I mean, it kind of summarizes in some ways a lot of what we've talked about, right? That it's experience, it's your personal experience put into ceramics. It's the things that we live, but then also for somebody to experience them, they're often seeing their relevancy, right? They're seeing like, oh, I know plants like that. I know this looks like something that I might connect to on some level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that really helps people a lot when they're buying the tiles. And to me, I figure not everyone is ready for a full kitchen or bathroom remodel or to put an all new tile on their fireplace. So that's why I put them in the frames, because then it's an intimate piece of artwork where some pieces they're big. You look at them across the room and you see them when you walk in the room and it's there. But there's other things in intimate spaces, that little wall that you walk by and you just glance at it and say, oh, you just have to stop and take a look at that little intimate piece of art. And the pottery can be the same way. Some of them you'll see it when you come in and meet, but then you got to go up and look at close up to it.
I really wish that we were together in a real place, because I think for me, the best part of the works that I've seen digitally is that I want to see them really. That they're so magical and the surfaces are so interesting. I really wish that I could have experienced them. And I think that's something that you can't do in this thing. And that's something that makes ceramics and really different than almost any other media, that it's incredibly tactile. Maybe the most, I would say one of the most tactile forms of, you know, maybe like jewelry, glass, but ceramics also because the surface is actually such an interesting feeling. It's, you know, both soft and kind of shiny, and there's so much to it.
It's so varied.
Yes, that's a good way to say it.
My copper matte pieces are very tactile. They feel almost like a automotive grade sandpaper.
Oh, really?
Ultra fine. Where the horsehair pieces and the naked ones, they are buttery smooth, but there's a warmth to them. Where a glazed piece of pottery won't have the same warmth to the feeling. There's a coldness to the glass on the surface. And so they have a different feeling, different texture. And one being buttery smooth is different than a glassy smooth.
Well, I mean, I think, you know, our time's almost up, but I think that's a great place to kind of leave it in that you're saying that they're all different in, you know, the kinds of things you're working on, but they're all best done when you can actually be with them. You know, I think that seeing your work virtually is a great way to start, but that everybody who's listening should go find you and find your work through your website and try to find a chance that they can see it themselves. So thank you very much for joining us and being part of the interview.
It's my pleasure. I'm glad to do it, and you'll have to see my work in person sometime.
I will. We'll make an appointment.
Send you a mug.
Post-COVID, we will see each other in real life.
That
so
would
thank
be
you.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you.